All right, I think what we'll do is we will get started, and people will join us. And I've got a big preamble to do, so by the time I'm finished, I'm sure we'll have a bigger group in the room today. So first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar today. My name is Chris Kilford, and I'm the president of the Canadian International Council branch here in Victoria, and I'm also the editor of the articles with Open Canada, which is CIC's online foreign policy magazine. I know we have some CIC members here today. We have guests, and of course our panelists who are beaming in from all over the world. So it's very exciting to have this happening today. For those of you that are not familiar with the Canadian International Council, we are an independent, nonpartisan organization, and our express mandate is to engage and inform Canadians about what is happening around the world. And that's what we're going to do today. Before we do get started, Erin and I are here in Victoria, and as CIC members, both of us, and as part of our overall team, we recognize that we live, we work, and learn on the traditional lands of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. So why are we here today? Well, we all know that the global rules-based international order is facing a lot of challenges today. That's an understatement. And part of this, too, is the challenges that the 1997 Ottawa Treaty banning landmines is facing. It's under threat. And for reasons to do largely with the war in Ukraine, we are seeing countries withdrawing, announcing that they're going to withdraw from the treaty. But I think what you'll find today is that around the world, we have a new generation out there who is hard at work, putting an end or trying to put an end to this world that we live in, the scourge of landmines and the devastation they do create. And to hold this webinar today, thanks to Erin and the team on the screen, we pulled together a wonderful panel. I'm going to introduce them. And then after that, they'll each speak for 5 to 7 minutes. And we will have time for a Q&A. And for housekeeping purposes, we do have a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. So do use that, and we'll try to get to all of your questions. So leading the conversation today is Erin Hunt, and Erin is well known in Victoria, especially, and of course across the country and elsewhere. She is the executive director of Mines Action Canada, and she's been carrying out public education on the Ottawa Treaty banning landmines since 2003, and working in humanitarian disarmament in various capacities since 2006. And then with Erin today, with Erin today is Rahila Poya. Rahila is in Afghanistan. It's wonderful to have you here, and she is a humanitarian and development professional with over 4 years' experience in the areas of victim assistance, child protection, women's empowerment, and support for persons with disabilities in Afghanistan. We also have Zainab Ajimi Badu, who's in Nigeria, and it's lovely to have you here. She is a humanitarian professional from Nigeria with over 9 years of experience in humanitarian disarmament and peace building, with a focus on humanitarian mine action and explosive ordnance risk education in northeast Nigeria. And finally, we have Batul coming in to us from New York, and Batul is a Syrian activist specializing in mine action and humanitarian disarmament, and she's worked in Syria with the United Nations Development Program and several organizations involved with mine clearance. So we have a lot of experience with us on the screen today. And with all of that, I'm going to turn over the floor to Erin, who will lead this discussion. Erin, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for being here. It's really exciting to sort of bring Mines Action Canada together with the CIC community. So first things first, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And what do we mean by when we're talking about a landmine? So we're talking about an explosive device that's placed on, in, or near the ground that explodes when triggered by the presence or the proximity or the contact of a person. And we're focusing on anti-personnel landmines because those are the ones that the Ottawa Treaty banning anti-personnel landmines deals with. But there are also anti-vehicle ones that need the weight of a vehicle to detonate. This sort of webinar came out of Chris and my conversations about wanting to look at some successes in the world with the CIC community, and also hear from some of the young women who are really working on the ground to turn international law into reality. Oh, no, I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about the treaty, but because we have people from all over the world here, time zones are an issue, and I'm starting my day, but some of us are ending our the days. So I'll just give you a little context on the Mine Action Fellows program that all three speakers are part of. So Mines Action Canada has been doing youth engagement on the Ottawa Treaty since the early 2000s. Chris said I started doing public engagement in 2003, and it was through one of Mac's youth programs there. And I think all of the Mine Action Fellows on this call are now doing the math to find out how old I actually am. So we're currently running the Mine Action Fellows program, and this includes over 150 youth in dozens of countries around the world. And everyone in the program is working, volunteering, or studying the Ottawa Treaty and its sister convention on the Convention on Cluster Munitions. The majority of them are young women because we look at the disarmament world and there's a massive gender imbalance. So we keep the program at the reverse. So disarmament is generally 30% women. So the Mine Action Fellows program in total is about 30% men. Today it is 0% men, but you know, we've had a lot of all male panels before. So the Mine Action Fellows receive monthly training. They have an ongoing network, including options for pen pals and regular calls. We provide small grants when we have the funding for that. And a big part of it is we sponsor youth to take part in diplomatic meetings to bring the sort of real stories from the ground that you're going to hear today to the decision makers in the treaties. So I think that's probably a good level of context, and I'll turn it over now to the fellows. I think, Rahila, you're up.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Hope you are all doing well. This is Rahila Poya from Afghanistan and representing Development and Ability Organization. So first of all, I would like to thank Human Action Canada for this wonderful opportunity. Through this program, I've learned a lot of things and gain valuable experience. I also appreciate all organizations and individuals who are supporting mine action widely in landmine survivors and victim assistance program in Afghanistan. So today I will briefly talk about landmine situation in Afghanistan, victim assistance here, and as well my role in mine action, the challenges that we face in Afghanistan, and a short success story. And next slide, please. Can you change the slide? Can you go to the next slide, please?
Is this the right one or the one after it?
Do you hear me? Am I audible to you?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you. Did you want the next slide was the one about the organization, or did you want?
If you could change the slide and go to the next slide, it will.
Yes,
I mean slide 3, number 3.
yes, that's what's showing on my screen. Is it showing for others? Yeah. Okay. I think everybody can see slide 3. I think it might just be slow
Yeah.
network.
I want to first talk about our organization. So okay. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, no problem. First, I want to tell about our organization, Development and Ability Organization, DAO. So if I tell you about our organization, Development and Ability Organization, established in 2004, it is a humanitarian Afghan NGO dedicated to supporting and helping persons with disability, landmine survivors, women, youth, and other vulnerable groups here in Afghanistan, in different provinces of Afghanistan, and including hard-to-reach and conflict-affected areas as well. So Development and Ability Organization implements a wide range of programs such as physical rehabilitation centers, and we are running right now as well, physiotherapy services, prosthetic and orthotic, and as well a part of this program, psychosocial support, victim assistance, disability vocational training, and guided its vision of an inclusive and resilient of Afghanistan, where every individual enjoys dignity and as well equal opportunity. So DO's mission is to provide quality rehabilitation centers, promote disability rights, and empower communities through education, capacity building, and sustainable humanitarian support. So if I tell you something about the landmine situation in Afghanistan, so Afghanistan, you know better, that remains one of, next slide, please, if you change.
It's changed. Yeah.
Can you go to next slide?
Yeah, I have. I think it
The
just takes a
landmine
while to,
situation in
yeah.
Afghanistan.
Yeah, I think it just takes a moment to update on your screen.
Do you hear me? Am I audible to you?
Yes. And everybody can see the slide 4?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So the landmine situation in Afghanistan, as we all know, Afghanistan remains one. Mm, yeah, I think. Okay, no problem, no problem. And Afghanistan remain one of the most mine-affected countries in the world. Even it's not visible for me, the numbers, slide number 4, but I'm going to continue if you.
Looks like the network might have failed us there.
I think so. And for the folks that are joining us here, um, uh, our speaker was in Afghanistan, and you can imagine the challenges that she is facing. So, Erin, why don't we carry on to our second speaker?
Sure. Um, sorry, I've just got to find, hold on. Am I, just 1 second. I think it's, you, Chris, for changing the slides,
Oh,
or
okay.
Zainab.
I can do that.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, Rahila is making her
I'm
way back.
sorry for.
Rahila, can you hear us?
I just have connection problem, and I can. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. I just have internet connection. Can I continue?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes.
I'll put your slides back up.
Okay.
And
Okay, thank you. So slide number 4, I prepared for landmine situation in Afghanistan. So as we all know, the landmine, Afghanistan, remain one of the most affected countries in the world. decades of conflict have left many areas contaminated in treating like civilians every day. So while clearance efforts continue, the number of persons with disability is rising, not only due to mines, but also because of natural disaster in these days, in these about last 5 years. Rehabilitation as well, inclusion and victim assistance program. Can you change this slide and go to the next slide, please? Yeah. What is victim assistance? You know better that victim assistance is one of the key pillars of mine actions. So it supports landmine survivors and the other persons with disabilities to live independently and with dignity. So it includes medical care and as well rehabilitation services, psychosocial and psychological support as well whenever we are running victim assistance or maybe victim assistance programs or projects. It means we are include medical care and rehabilitation services to our vulnerable people and as well psychosocial support, or maybe we can say psychological support. And the other pillar is economic inclusion through vocational training to persons with disability and vulnerable community. In advocacy, that this part, this is one of the pillars that I really love. Advocacy for the rights and as well for the participations. So it's very important because maybe the people that they are suffering or maybe they are vulnerable people or disabled people, maybe they are not able to advocate for their rights, and we are here to advocate for their rights. We should take care of them, and what we can do, we should also do for them. So the goal is to restore hope, helps survivors build their lives as well. So can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So my role in my action. So in my action, my main role is within the victim assistant. I work closely with, colleagues to support rehabilitation services for survivors and persons with disability here in Afghanistan. I provide information as well, advocate for survivors and visit rehabilitation centers and equal access, for women, girls with disability. I'm proud to contribute to making my action more inclusive and as well, the from I can say that I just also have last year a small grant from Mine Action Canada, which allow me to further support rehabilitation activities and as well raising awareness for survivors. I'm also proud to inclusion and support for mine explosive rounds of war or EURA survivors. So as I mentioned before, we are also having two different rehabilitation services, physical rehabilitation services into different provinces and the most affected province of Afghanistan, like one is Kunar and one is Oruzgan. So sometimes I also visit them as well. And can we move to the next slide, the challenges we face? Thank you. So the challenges that we face our work, as an Afghan or maybe being in Afghanistan, our work face several challenges. First of all, in these last 4 and 5 years, we are facing limited funding and as well aid cats as well. So restricted movement for female staff this is the most challenging part, because if you cannot work because you are a female worker, it's very easy. The tension from donors in these as well, everything took over, and limited accessibility to remote areas. In Afghanistan, not just Kunar or Uzgan, but there are other remote areas and I mean mountainous areas that we should access to those areas as well. And the shortage of materials and as well trained staff is another challenges that we're facing. So despite these challenges, our team continues serve and as well with dedication and passion for people with disability. Next slide, please. So as well, I want to tell you a success story. There is not just a success story. There are millions of success stories here in Afghanistan, facing these challenges, having limited funds or as well restrictions. But by the way, we are having success stories as well. The success story I want to tell is about a man who is a 30-year-old man from Bar Narang village, and his name is Sharifullah. So he lost his leg in a tragic bomb explosion that turned his life upside down. So once an active and wondering how he could ever walk again and or care for his family. So for a time, his heart was filled with hopelessness until one day he learned about our organization. I mean, Development and Ability Organization, DU Rehabilitation Center in Kunar. With courage and determination, he visited our center and he was welcomed with kindness and as well with respect. There he received not only a prosthetic leg, but also training, because we are not just providing kinds of physical rehabilitation centers, but we are also providing trainings as well. We are providing social support for the persons with disability. We have reintegration with the community as well with their families. So he also received training and encouragement to believe in himself one more time. And when he took his first confident steps, it felt like a new life began, and provides for his family and as well inspires others by showing that disability doesn't define one's, limits. His story is a powerful reminder that with compassion as well with support, even the deepest wounds can become the foundation for strength and renewal. Next slide, please. So this is the story, this is the person, this is Sharifullah that I spoke about. So you can see here the renewal and as well the services that we provide to him. So can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So in conclusion, I want to say that Afghanistan still faces major challenges related to landmines and as well disability. But every mine cleared, and every lamp produced, and every awareness session held brings us one step closer to a safer and as well more inclusive country. Together, I believe we can ensure that no one is left behind. And I would like to remind all of us that our efforts should go beyond borders, religious or tribes, because humanity unites all us. Each of us has a responsibility to advocate for those who cannot raise their voices, especially for women and girls with disability in Afghanistan, who continue to struggle, or maybe for dignity, access, and equal opportunity. And let us stand together as humans to advocate for them and to build a future where hope and inclusion overcome fear and limitation. Thank you so much for the chance. Thank you, Erin and the team, Mind Action Canada, Chris, for giving me such a big chance to represent our organization and have time to talk about these things. And if you have any questions, so you're welcome. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Rahila. I know it's very late in Afghanistan, so if you do need to go to bed, I can pass on the questions to you over email as well. But thank you. I think up next we have Zainab, so I'll stop sharing, and Chris is on slide duty for Zainab. Although you are muted.
Um, okay, good evening all. My name is Zainab Ajmi and I'm from Nigeria. I am one of the Mine Action Fellows in Nigeria. And first, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Mine Action Canada for giving me the privilege and opportunity to serve as a speaker during this webinar with the Canadian International Council. It was truly an honor to contribute to such an important conversation and share insights along dedicated experts as well my fellow youth. So next slide, please. Yes, so the landmine situation in Nigeria. Okay, I got to not see so clear. Can you hear me all?
Yes, we can. I'm on your second slide now. What is the landmine situation in Nigeria?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I am trying to, sorry. So the landmine and explosive ordnance problem in Nigeria concentrated mainly in the northeastern part at the moment, driven by the ongoing conflicts in states like Borno, UB, and Adamawa State, especially around communities in Bama, Guza, Dambua, Monguno, and Konduga. These communities face the highest contamination. Borno State is the most heavily affected state. UN Mine Action Services explicitly identify Borno as a high-risk area for improvised explosive devices. So the landmine situation in Nigeria. So currently the case we have is the improvised landmines, which actually work exactly as the factory-made landmines. So including road-planted IDs, person-borne IDs, and vehicle-borne IDs in specific LGs, including Goza, Gubio, Dambua, Mafa, Martin, Galabiu, Chibok, and Kaga. In 2025 alone, there have been 430 casualties and 269 explosive incidents, with civilian making up the majority. And most incidents are caused by IEDs, which remain the biggest threats on the roads, farmlands, and community movement routes. In Yobe State, IED attacks have been reported in specific LGs like Gujba and Gaidem. These LGs have been identified as the areas with the highest violence. Also, in Adamawa State, Adamawa State is also part of the ID threat zone. Insurgents actually placing IDs to lure victims. For example, hiding IDs using Naira notes. Again, Borno State is the masterpiece of ID activities, looking at it's the initial area where this conflict started. So especially in LGs like Goza, Gupio, Mafa, Konduga, Dambua, and Ngala. And also this contamination affects everyday life. It limits humanitarian access, blocks safe returns of displaced people, disrupts farming, and increases protection risks for women, men, and children differently. So while over 280,000 people have been reached with risk education, the clearance is still limited and the danger remains high. And looking at the risk patterns and the risk factors, like these IDs are placed in these transit roads, especially in those roads that links Nigeria to other bordering communities or countries like Cameroon. So in this slide, we're going to see the 2025 dashboard by United Nations Mine Action Services from January to September so far. The number of casualties, the civilians, we had 430 casualties with 267 civilians being victims of this explosives. And the number of people reached with EORE, and again, if we're looking at the number of incidents per month, we can see in the month of August, we had the high number of incidents. And looking at the overall number of people that were affected, we can see apart from the unknown gender, of course, after this strategic incidents, some people cannot be actually identified as women, men, or children. So apart from the unknown gender, men have the highest number, being them as the solely providers, the people going out to those areas to look for the means of livelihood. Next slide, please. Yes, so what is risk education? So risk education, or EORE, is an activity which seeks to reduce the risk of injury from mines, explosive remnants of war, and other explosive ordinances by raising awareness and promoting safe behaviors among women, men, and children in affected communities. So in summary, risk education is helping them recognize dangerous items, teaching them the safe behaviors like avoiding suspicious areas, and also explaining what to do if they find an explosive, and then reaching high-risk groups such as children, farmers, women, and returnees. And risk education main components are public information dissemination as one of the components, which is sharing timely, relevant, and safety messages through public medias like the radio broadcast. And also the second component is education and training, which is interactive sessions that build practical knowledge and safe behaviors, which we do it face-to-face risk education in the communities. And also community liaison, it's part of the components, engaging with these communities to understand their needs and adapt those messages. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
It's it says what is your name, or what is your role in mine action?
Yeah. So my role in mine action focuses on protecting civilians from the risks posed by landmines, IEDs, and other ordinances. So I work on risk education, supporting the design and delivery of safety messaging that helps communities recognize threats and adapt safe behaviors. I work with community engagement as well. I work closely with the affected populations to understand their daily movement patterns, challenges, and also protection needs. And also, I work with data and analysis using incident data, such as the alien maps to such as incident data, such as casualty trends, hotspot mapping, and community feedback to improve programming and inform humanitarian and protection responses. Also, part of my role in Mine Action, I work with advocacy and coordination. I engage with the government actors, humanitarian partners, and local stakeholders to strengthen mine action policies, improve access, and ensure that interventions are people-centered. So overall, my contribution is to ensure that mine action remains context-driven, evidence-based, and it aligns with the IMA's principles, with the ultimate goal of reducing harm and supporting safer communities. Next slide, please. Okay, challenges. So in Nigeria, our two main challenges, or the biggest challenges, is the aid cord and also the ongoing conflict. So reduced funding has directly affected our ability to scale mine action activities, which means fewer risk education sessions, especially in remote areas and also high-risk communities, and limited resources for data collection, monitoring, and community engagement. Reduced support for local partners who are critical for last-mile outreach, and overall funding gaps slow down our ability to prevent casualties at time when needs are increasing. And the second biggest challenge is, of course, the ongoing conflict. The volatile situation, security situation makes it difficult to reach the communities most at risk. Restricted access to contaminated areas due to active fighting, because our conflict is still active, and new explosive hazards emerging from the ongoing clash and IDUs, and communities repeatedly being displaced, making sustained education and follow-up difficult. High-risk routes that humanitarian teams cannot actually safely use to go and provide the assistance needed. So in summary, aid costs reduce our capacity, and the active conflict expands the contamination and limit access. So together they make protecting civilians more challenging and increase the risks of injuries and deaths. Next slide. Yeah, success stories. So as Rahila mentioned, we had millions of success stories, but of course, one of our most meaningful success story came from a small community near Goza. When return movement began last year, the conflict gets a little bit down, then people began to return, the government began to return people back to their communities. So when the return movement began last year, people were afraid to farm or collect firewood because of the suspected explosive contaminations in their farmlands. So we conducted several risk education sessions, first with the community leaders, then with women, men, and children separately, so everyone could speak freely about their daily risks. So after a few weeks, a group of boys found a suspicious object while herding animals. So instead of touching it, they remembered the safety messages we taught them, which is when you see an unknown item or a suspicious item, don't go near, don't touch, report. So they immediately notified the community focal persons, and those focal persons contacted the security actors, and the device turned out to be an unexploded mortar. So their quick action prevented what could have been multiple casualties, especially among children. And after that incident, the community became even more engaged in safety practices, and we saw a noticeable drop in risk behaviors around farmlands and pathways. So for us, this was a powerful reminder, even when clearance is slow and access is difficult, the right knowledge delivered at the right time truly saves life. Next slide. So yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'm glad for this platform provided, and also the trust placed in me and the continuous support that Mine Action Canada gives. So thank you so much for listening, and do have a great morning or evening ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Zainab. I can vouch for your risk education sessions being very engaging. She and a colleague led some sessions with diplomats in the Mine Ban Treaty meeting last year, and we had to ask the diplomats to quiet down because nobody could hear the other people talking in the same room. They got very competitive with their knowledge of dangerous objects. And so we'll turn it over to this side of the Atlantic, to Batul, to talk a bit about Syria.
Hello, everyone. I'm gonna share my screen with you. Just a minute. Okay. Okay, can you all see it clearly? So before I begin, I want to start with something that really deeply matters for me. Syria is more than a conflict zone or a headline. I'm sure you read a lot of news about Syria as a conflict zone, as a war, as a refugee, and as a suffering. But Syria is more than that. It's a land of history, culture, and resilience, home to one of the oldest civilizations in the world. When you see images of Syria in the news, you mostly see the destruction. But Syria is also beauty, art, heritage, and people who never stopped trying to rebuild their lives, even in the hardest moments. I believe Chris did a brief introduction about me, but I'm gonna to repeat it again. Hello, I'm Batul Al-Baquni. I am from Syria. I born in Syria in Damascus, and I spent all of my life in Syria actually. I studied political science at Damascus University, which is not a very popular major for women, especially in Syria. And there is not a lot of job opportunity for graduate people, but I decided to study political science because I wanted to understand the world. I want to understand the politics. I want to understand the conflicts. I want to understand what is happening around me. Also in Syria, I work with several international organizations in the fields of development, women empowerment, gender, and mine action. Actually, I moved recently to New York in the early of January this year, and also I am a fellow with Mine Action Canada. So, if you want to talk about the landmine and explosive remnants situation in Syria, that will be a lot of talking because we are talking about 14 years of conflict in Syria, which include a lot of parties, which include a lot of groups. So it's a very complicated, but I will try to give you a brief description. I was around 10 years when things began to change in Syria. The conflict started. Back then, I didn't really understand what a landmine was. I only know it's something that explodes if someone step on it. My knowledge was very simple, and actually I took it from TV or movies. I just didn't understand more than I should understand as a child. As I grow older, I follow the news every day. Almost daily, there was like a headline about a civilian or a child killed or injured by a landmine, or explosive remnant of war. But actually, no one described to us what is happening, why those people are dying this way, what the meaning of a landmine, or what the meaning of an explosive remnant of war. I became curious. I wanted to understand why people are dying this way. And then when my story actually started, around 2021, I started reading more, researching, and trying to understand the bigger picture. That was when I realized the true scale of disaster. I just discovered in one moment that my whole country was communicated by mines and explosive remnant of war. I tried to do more research. I feel disappointed that almost no one was speaking about this issue or giving it the attention it deserved. And once I know the truth, and once I felt like a moral and social responsibility to talk about it loudly and to be a voice for the people whose voices were never reached to the world. What started as a curiosity for me became the issue I deeply believe in. And as you see on the screen, there is the numbers and facts about Syria. Almost 14.4 million of people and around 65 of the population live in risk. That's mean when I was in Syria, my steps were in danger. I couldn't step safely in my own land. And that's not what it was not only me, it was like 14 million people other. And as you know, early December, the regime in Syria fell. So after the regime fell in Syria, people decided to come back to their homes and to their villages, which was abandoned for a long time. And then a new disaster happened. People back to their homes without knowing that those homes and those villages and those lands were affected and full with landmines and explosive ordnance. So we witnessed a very, very increase in the number of casualties and victims, which was very, very unfortunate. Beside all of that, Syria funding and mine action still very, very limited. It was politically before the regime fall because no one wanted to fund any program under the former regime areas. That was very sad because people were suffering so much. And even now, after the regime is fall, we're still facing very shortage in funding and in mine action programs in Syria. So when we talk about the effect of landmines, we are not only talking about how they kill people, because even if they didn't kill you, they can still affect your daily life. We have thousands of hectares of agricultural lands out of service because people can't back to their lands and work on them because they are highly contaminated with mines and explosive remnants. Also, we can talk about the rate of disability caused by explosive related injuries, which is very extremely high, leaving families and communities with long-term, with physical, social, economic consequences. So even if you survive from the explosion of a landmine, you will still suffer in a very sad and bad way. Also, I will give you a very life sad story from the field. Syria is famous in pistachio, which is something we all like to include in our sweets. But unfortunately, most of pistachio farms are highly contaminated because they were located along former front lines. They are in a city called Hama, and Hama was a very affected area in the conflict. So today, the landlords pay poor worker extra money to enter those fields and harvest the pistachio. Those workers accept the risk because they are very desperate, need income to survive, which is very heartbreaking to see people choosing between danger and hunger. So, and actually, a lot of them lost their lives or they get injured while they did this work and entered those fields. And we can see that also in the truffles season. Syria is also famous in truffles, which is some type of mushroom, usually grows in spring after rain. It's a grow in all lands. So people try to collect truffles in order to sell it because it's an expensive item somehow. And every time in the truffle season, we see how the increase in victims numbers, which is very sad. People had no choice between safety and survive. They choose to do this very dangerous work just in order to obtain some income to survive, to feed their families, or to buy medication, which is very sad. Now I want to talk about why I chose mine action. Actually, maybe if Syria was a safe area or a safe country and we didn't had any war or conflict, maybe I will never think about mine action. But I found myself in the middle of this issue. I was 10 years old when things began to change in Syria and the conflict started. So growing up in the middle of the conflict gave me no choice except being involved. And when I saw my people, my community affected and dying every way in a very, very sad way, I believe dying by a landmine or by an explosive ordinance, it's a very tragic way to die. So I believe what led me to choose mine action is my environment. And now when I ask myself if I am happy in this field, I say yes. Maybe I had a sad way to choose it, but I believe now it's my commitment, not only for Syria. I know I'm talking too much about Syria because it's my country, but my commitment is global, not only for Syria, because no one on earth deserves to die by a landmine or to step on the ground feeling fear of dying. Everyone deserves to live with dignity and to live in a safe environment. About my role in mine action, actually, I worked on awareness raising and advocacy for explosive hazards in Syria. I'm also very interested in working on research and analysis in humanitarian disarmament. I get the benefit of my academic background in political science, and I'm trying to do that much to include academic research in humanitarian disarmament and policies. Actually, now I am working on my colleague, which is also a fellow with me, with Mine Action Canada. We are advocating for Syria to join the Ottawa Treaty, which is something that really means a lot of us, and we have been waiting for it for years. And I'm also committed on working on telling the stories behind the numbers, because when organizations or reports are talking about the numbers of victims, they only mention numbers, but no one talk about the stories of those numbers, how they were humans like us. They had dreams, they had families, they had goals in life. So we need to see the bigger picture when we talk about one victim or 100 victims. They all had stories and it deserved to be told. And now, actually, I want to say a big thanks to Mine Action Canada. Actually, when I was in Syria, it was very hard to gain any knowledge on information or even networking with anyone in this field outside Syria. When I joined the fellowship with Mine Action Canada, it gave me a big door actually to get to know people who share the same values and goals as me. It gave me the tools, the information. It gave me the guide actually to complete in this field actually. So I really want to thank Mine Action Canada for their commitment to empower youth through this fellowship program actually. And I want to mention that they gave me a very valuable opportunity to participate in the first committee meeting at the United Nations in September, in October, actually. I was with Erin, actually, and that was like an internship, and it was amazing because for the first time I was seeing disarmament not as a report, I was seeing it from inside. I saw how countries are delivering their statements. I saw the delegation, the negotiation. I saw how we can do advocacy and how we can really do an impact. So I learned a lot from this opportunity, actually. Now I want to share a success story from Syria. And when I thought about what I want to share, I felt like sharing one story, it will not be fair because when we are talking about the Syrian people, we are talking about thousands of success stories, something of resilient stories. And actually, that all happened because of the solidarity and international support. So when you do a donation, when you do a support to another country, trust me, it's a change a life of someone. I saw that. I was in the field in Syria, and I saw even the small donation what can do to someone else. And also during my work in Syria, we received a lot of donations from Canadian people or Canadian government, and it really helped on economic, social, and psychological fields to Syria. So to everyone who donate for Syria or supported the Syrian people, I want to say a big thank for you all. In the end, I want to thank you again for your time and attention. And also, I'm very grateful for this space to share Syria's story. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Erin. And as I always said, mine action is not only about restoring safety, dignity, and hope. Every person in Syria and across the world deserves a future where every step is safe. And I am sharing in the picture in the background. That's my brother Majid. He is also working on mine action. He is working on risk education. As you can see, is delivering a risk education session for the kids in rural Damascus in Syria. And thank you very much all.
Thank you, Batul. I know your interactions with the diplomats were a little less joyful than Zainab's risk education games at First Committee. Before I turn it back to Chris, I think I was just going to give a little bit of context on what's going on with the Ottawa Treaty, so that you have the sort of the zoomed out view after taking such a detailed look at what the role that young women really are playing on the ground on this issue. So just a little history reminder for those of you who weren't alive in the 90s. There was a global movement in the early 1990s against anti-personnel landmines because development and humanitarian organizations realized that they couldn't do their work because of this crisis. The human toll was unimaginable, and I think all three of our speakers really highlighted that many of the humanitarian and conflict services that are provided to people are really challenged by the presence of landmines. And what civil society did is we really shifted the discussion from their military utility to the unacceptable harm they cause. And so then you were focusing on the human impact of the weapons and working closely with survivors and affected communities. And as Canadians, I mean, I think that this is one of the issues we can be the most proud of. In October 1996, then Foreign Minister Lloyd Axworthy broke every diplomatic rule and announced a challenge to the world that nobody knew about. Challenged the whole world to come back to Ottawa in a year to sign a treaty banning landmines. And over that year, civil society, international organizations, survivors, and states all took part in the negotiations. And this was one of the first times civil society was in the room and not locked out of the room waiting for people to come out for a bathroom or a smoke break to find out what's happening in the diplomatic room. And then everyone did come back to Ottawa on December 3rd, 1997, to sign the treaty. And it's become one of the widest disarmament treaties in the world. It's destroyed 50 million stockpiled landmines. More than 30 countries are completely clear of landmines. And casualties have dropped from over 20,000 a year in the 90s to just over 5,000 in 2023. The official 2024 numbers from the Landmine Monitor will come out on December 1st. So stay tuned for that. But we are facing some challenges. I mean, you've heard quite a bit about how the aid cuts, starting with USAID and moving through other donors that are sort of following that example, have had an impact. The mine action sector hasn't been hit as hard as women's rights, reproductive health, and some of the other crucial services. But this has been really challenging. I mean, Zainab summed it up really well with her presentation there that, we know how to fix this problem. We just need the support to do it. And in the Canadian context, I know our government's really looking at return on investment right now. And we have research from Lebanon that shows that every dollar invested in landmine clearance and risk education resulted in an economic gain of over $4. So mine action makes good business sense, everyone. But on the political level is probably where people have been hearing a bit, and I know it's been reported in the Canadian press that there is some pushback against the treaty. And I think on that political level, this is the treaty becoming a victim of its own success. And also this ongoing pushback that Chris mentioned about the rules-based international order. So I think because for a long time, a lot of major world powers haven't had landmines on the ground. So, Batul summed it up really well. I think that, her knowledge of landmines before the war was what's on TV. And I think for a lot of North America and Europe, that is where we are right now. And so people have forgotten what the landmines actually do to peoples and to their communities. And they start to believe these inaccurate statements about military utility and all these sorts of things. And then we also see, stuff happening in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Gaza and Ukraine, where people aren't really following the rules-based international order. So all this has come together in, as Chris mentioned, some states wanting to withdraw from the treaty. So it's Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. And this is unprecedented. No one's ever withdrawn from a humanitarian disarmament treaty before. But we did get two new countries to join this year. So even as things are going badly in one way, they're balancing out a little bit. And these states have publicly cited the threat from Russia and the need to protect their citizens. But the evidence is showing that AP landmines barely slow down an invasion. And if the threat is Russia, we know that Russia uses airstrikes and artillery and drones to fight. So anti-personnel landmines are not really going to be that helpful. In private, those countries and those ambassadors have admitted that there's no evidence that landmines will deter or really slow a Russian attack, but they have to be seen as doing something to protect their citizens. But landmines are a weapon from the 90s, and that's not really going to solve our 2025 security problems, which are legitimate security concerns. Just we don't need retro weapons to fix that. And then the other challenge is that over the summer, Ukraine submitted a communication to the UN that it plans to suspend the Ottawa Treaty because Russia is using landmines in how it's fighting its illegal invasion. The problem is there's not really a legal basis for such an action. The Ottawa Treaty doesn't allow that. The Vienna Convention on Treaties, yes, I'm being very nerdy and annoying, about this, but the Vienna Convention on Treaties that they cite doesn't allow for armed conflict to be used as a reason to suspend a treaty. And the thing is, it was even debated during the negotiations of the Ottawa Treaty that, if there was a conflict with a state not party, maybe we should have some ways out and around this. But that idea was really soundly rejected. I mean, I guess it is kind of common sense that the existence of an armed conflict is not a reason to get around the treaties you agreed to limiting weapons. If you agree to limit a weapon, you kind of sort of assume that you need to use it at some point. And, this is definitely a case where a good friend is going to tell you when you have something stuck in your teeth, or in this case, when you're pursuing probably a not great line of action. Because landmine contamination is going to kill and maim for decades to come. And as I said, they're 1990s weapons, and this is a 2025 conflict. Canada's already invested over $50 million in landmine clearance in Ukraine. So having the Ukrainians add to that feels kind of weird. But this is a whole kettle of fish that we could have a full webinar on if you really want to get super nerdy. But even with these challenges, I think what you've heard today is that the treaty is still saving lives and limbs. Like the land is being cleared, the victims are being assisted. Next week, the states are all meeting in Geneva for the annual meeting of states parties, where they're going to have to address those challenges. So Mines Action Canada will be there with 18 Mine Action Fellows. So you can follow along on our Facebook or our Instagram where we're at Mines Action Can. I'm too old for TikTok, so we won't be on there, but other social media platforms, you can find us there. We're going to be looking for strong language from all the states affirming that suspension is not allowed, condemning the use that has been ongoing by Russia and by Myanmar and other states, and ask them to call on the states that have withdrawn to stay in the treaty. We're going to, feel free to write your MP here in Canada to make sure that Canada stands up for our treaty. And there's a new podcast out by the International Campaign to Ban Landmines called Silent Killers that's Canadian produced. And it gives you this little like background look into the campaign. And before I turn it back to Chris, I guess it's just an important reminder that, hopefully today has shown you that despite how grim the world might look on the news, and the accuracy of former President Obama's comments regarding the efforts of a few older men trying to undo everything because they're scared of getting old and not being relevant and in power anymore, which is, having issues, the foundational rules of the world-based order. I think you've seen today that there are some still people who are very committed to solving this problem for once and for all, no matter how difficult the situation is in their countries. And they're doing a great job of it.
Well, thank you, Erin, and to our panel members. I know Rahila had to leave. For the audience out there, we do have the Q&A function down below. And I know we have a couple of questions. I wanted to thank Jerry Plash, who provided some information for us, and Mohammed's beaming in from Somalia and listening to our talk today. And I would say from my own perspective, we've been talking about the war in Ukraine. I had a chance in March this year to go to Poland and see the Canadian military training the Ukrainian military engineers how to remove anti-tank mines from the field. So we are providing a lot of training. We're also learning from Ukraine what they're encountering on the battlefield. And Erin is absolutely right. This is a country that is littered with munitions, landmines, mortar shells, artillery shells, unexploded, and it will take decades and decades to to begin to clear what we have there, a major undertaking. And this is what you get with landmines and cluster munitions and all of these things. So, Erin, I do have a question for you from Maureen, because Maureen is asking you if you had a chance to sit down with our Minister of Foreign Affairs to talk over this particular issue, and I think you've alluded to it already, but if you had 5 minutes with the minister, what would you say to her about what is happening with the Ottawa Treaty?
I think I would probably say that sort of exactly what I just said, that, landmines are 1990s weapons. They're not going to solve a 2025 conflict. They're just going to make the post-conflict world more dangerous. And as a good friend to Ukraine, Canada should be helping Ukraine deal with its security concerns and the conflict safely without making the future more dangerous. But to be honest, I'd probably try and weasel in a couple minutes for some of the youth who know the reality of these weapons and can give sort of this grassroots examples. So, Senator Batul had, I probably would WhatsApp the Mine Action Fellows group and see what everybody had to say before we went into the meeting. So I don't know if you guys had anything to add there.
Well, maybe Batul, if you had 5 minutes with the new Syrian foreign minister, because obviously there's been a big change happening in Syria, what would you say to the Syrian foreign minister?
Actually, I believe in New Syria. That's what we call it now, New Syria after Assad regime era. I believe we will not use landmine ever. And I will believe the new government may take real consideration about joining Ottawa Treaty. But as you know, it's a long process. We need to be patient with Syria. The government is still new, and we have a lot of problem actually in Syria. But I believe they are open to the idea. Maybe after 1 year or 2 years, we will be ready to join Ottawa Treaty. And as I mentioned before, New Syria will not be a place to use any type of weapons like landmines, cluster munitions, chemical weapons. So yeah, I will definitely tell that to our minister. And maybe what I will add from my personal perspective is to focus more about mine action in Syria. I know we have a lot of problems now. I know we have a lot of priorities, but for me, I will always talk about mine action in Syria.
Thanks, Batul. And Zainab, if the Nigerian foreign minister or even president walked into the room, how would you approach them and talk to them about clearing mines and dealing with the mine issues? I mean, what do you need the most where you are?
Well, if or in the room with the president or the minister, of course, one thing I'll actually emphasize on for them to put more effort in clearing those improvised explosive devices that actually kill and maim people, and then allocate more funding to the mine action aspect, especially the risk education and then the clearance part. Though the victim support too, it's a little bit minimal in Nigeria. But of course, I'll actually ask him if they can put more effort in the mine action sector rather than this rehabilitation of the ex-fighters they're currently doing. So yeah.
I see. So there's you mentioned rehabilitation of the fighters, I guess in the northern part of the country. And so this is where the emphasis is going now.
Yeah, most of the emphasis is going on the rehabilitation of the ex-fighters who have surrendered. So yeah, they are being rehabilitated back to the communities, and advocating for the communities to accept them, and then to stop discriminating them
Mhm.
or accusing of them of the previous acts they have committed. So yeah, but the main issue is the conflict is still ongoing. Some are surrendering while some others are also moving into the group. So yeah.
This is Boko Haram, is it? Zainab, it's
Yes.
Boko Haram. Right, right.
Yes, it's the Boko Haram and the ISWAP.
Yeah, we follow that conflict from Canada, as we do Syria and Afghanistan as well. And I think Erin, you answered the question. This is being recorded, so we will have it on the CIC YouTube site eventually. And I'm not seeing any other questions, Erin. So I think we could probably say our goodbyes to everyone and let our panelists go, if that's all right with you.
That is fine by me.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having us. Oh, and I guess
Oh,
we just
nice.
lost the now.
And sure enough, it's late there.
Perfect time.
But before
Yeah.
we do wrap up, I'd like to, thank everybody that joined us today. It was quite a technical feat to bring this together because we had Rahila in Afghanistan and obviously Nigeria online and Syria in a way, and I see Zainab's coming back. To bring all of these young people that are doing such great work in the field or advocating for what is happening in the future. Before we started today's webinar, I mentioned to Rahila that I had served in Afghanistan for a year, and as with the Canadian military, and to see her online today, knowing the plight that women and girls face in that country. I mean, I was tearing up. I got to tell you. Because there's such a bright a person there whose life is limited, but she's still contributing, and I thought that was fantastic. And I also served in Turkey. I told Batul I spent a lot of time on the Syrian border when the refugee crisis started, and to see what happened to that country is heartbreaking. And now, as you said, Batul, we have New Syria, so we all hope that New Syria will succeed, and we are seeing a lot of movement in that direction. So let's hope this continues. Zainab, thank you for being here also from Nigeria, and Erin for all the work that you're doing at Mine Action Canada. I think if you're listening today, I made a note to a scratchy to myself to make a modest donation to Mines Action Canada for the work that you're doing, and I think it's incredibly important. And I've been inspired this morning by all the panelists that we have today. So I'm going to draw this event to a close, and I wish we could be in person. That's for sure. Maybe one day we all will be in person together. So thank you again, Erin and Zainab and Batul and Rahila, who's not with us right now. But thank you for taking the time to be with us, and also for the audience as well. All the best, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you all so much. Bye,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.